Thanks so much, Matt. Pleasure to be here. I know everyone's had quite a lot. We're all a bit tired, so I'm going to endeavor to make this next 5 minutes as exciting as possible. To clarification, I'm Francis Lem, one of the co-founders of CARNOT, and we are really developing the future of sustainable powertrains. And at the heart, our mission is to solve one of the toughest challenges of net zero right now, which is decarbonising the marine, heavy-duty vehicles, and prime power markets. Now, these are considered some of the hardest sectors to abate, accounting for about 13% of global CO2. And more worryingly, they don't actually have any production-ready technologies to achieve net zero. So it's a genuine gigaton scale problem. So let's take a look at some of the options for these markets. And we see the traditional lineup starting with existing engine technology, which despite great range, power density, and great total cost of ownership, it's the poor efficiency and emissions that mean they really are the root cause of the problem we are all trying to solve at the moment. And so next on the list, you jump to batteries, which are great for light duty, short range applications. But in these markets, the size and range requirements often make them far too heavy, costly, and difficult to recharge, that ultimately results in unaffordable total cost of ownership for the end user. And so fuel cells can improve vastly on these problems, but the fact remains actually for all hydrogen-only technologies, they have the existing barriers of how expensive green hydrogen is and some of the infrastructure requirements to make it happen. And so at CARNOT, we really believe that the best solution here should be a clean and efficient fuel agnostic engine. And it just so happens that's exactly what we're doing by producing the world's most efficient net zero fuel agnostic powertrain, which I know is a bit of a mouthful, so please bear with me. And so really at the heart of it, you look at modern engines and they waste tremendous amounts of energy to cooling systems. And it's actually the biggest driver of their poor efficiency and emissions. Our unique design uses advanced technical ceramics that can actually operate without the need for cooling. And that brings a step change in efficiency that the industry has never seen before. But we did not stop there. We actually designed the entire engine architecture to be fuel agnostic, which means it can not only run on hydrogen, but also biofuels, e-fuels, and ammonia as well. But why are these features important? And well, the high efficiency means we can drastically reduce fuel costs and therefore significantly reduce total cost of ownership. And that lowers the barriers for adoption of hydrogen and other net zero fuels. The fuel agnostic design means that our engines can be easily retrofitted for a variety of net zero fuels, as and when commercially viable for the end user, allowing them to retain many of their assets. And last, and often overlooked, is the compatibility of our technology to these existing end user markets, but also to the supply chains that we need to scale this technology. And so I suppose the next question is what the state of this technology is to date. And so in parallel to running a prototype in our test facility, we've already secured industry-funded co-development projects in both marining and mining to develop demonstrator solutions. And we actually discovered that our ability to blend things like hydrogen with ammonia meant that our powertrains were cheaper than traditional diesel operations. And actually, we had no NOx issues, making us a truly zero emission combustion solution. Our long-term goal is to be a leading powertrain supplier. And that journey really begins with delivering field trials with our current partners over the next 2 years, and for which we're currently raising a seed round of £2 million, led in partnership with Mitsubishi and NYK Line. From there, we aim to co-development partnerships with the existing industry players to utilize the supply chain that's already out there for engines in order to scale as rapidly as possible. We'll be starting with low barrier markets like generators and auxiliary power units before then going into main propulsion systems for the heavy duty vehicles. The team set out to undertake this particularly ambitious task, include some of the best engineers from Formula One and aerospace, some experts in strategizing, commercializing IP, and of course, some former executives from the automotive world, all backed up by a wealth of industry, academic and government bodies. But of course, we're always on the lookout for new investors and development partners interested in taking on this $1 trillion gigaton problem. So thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to the questions.
And thanks very much for pitching. Incredible pitch. I will bring back our investor panel, get Craig in here, get myself in here. Craig, do you want to kick things off with questions?
Yeah, I will start. So first of all, a really nice presentation, and I don't know, congratulations on taking on what may be like the hardest challenge in startup world, which is becoming an automotive supplier. Like I can't imagine anything more difficult and ambitious and a worthy goal. Can you talk a little bit more about what's been demonstrated in the prototype? Sort of what does the prototype demonstrate and achieve, but what sort of technical hurdles are still left to build something that could be suitable for even the low barrier entry markets that you talked about?
No, definitely. Thank you for the question. And what we have at the moment is a small scale 50 kilowatt single cylinder prototype that demonstrates the core aspects of the technology. So one of the things we identified when talking to some of the end users before going into partnerships was the kind of minimum requirements we had to demonstrate to really understand the core technology. And that was manufacturability and durability of these ceramic components, which is obviously an area that people question. And of course, the ability to actually operate at a higher thermal efficiency. So what we've been running is back-to-back tests between our high temperature material design and a conventional cooled engine to demonstrate the heat balance between the two and really show that we can drastically improve brake thermal efficiency by removing the cooling jacket. And what we plan to do with this round is to really take that up into the next phase of design, where we can actually demonstrate the retrofitting of the different fuels, achieve a minimum of 55% brake thermal efficiencies, which is the kind of indicator that some of the OEMs we're in discussions with have said is the real milestone we need to hit before going from letters of support into a full-scale pilot project.
And what's the origins of the IP here, this design? The company's name is CARNOT. Is it named that way because you're actually using a Carnot cycle engine, or because that's the sort of maximum limit of efficiency for a heat engine?
Yes, so it's really the latter. We decided to name the company after the father of modern thermodynamics. He predicted the maximum theoretical efficiency was 80% for any engine if you take into account the second law of thermodynamics. And so we thought it was fitting that we're trying to really push the boundaries for what an engine can do, and try and approach that theoretical limit. The IP really, and all three of our founders, I mean, we're engineering by background. Engineers who always had a different approach to solving problems and have worked in various different startups. When we sort of came together, we initially bounced some ideas around how to get these materials to work. And we actually landed on essentially IP that is around enabling technology. So it's not the use of these materials. It's actually around the specific designs we have and operating principles that enable these materials to work. So what we've done is redesigned the entire engine architecture to work for the ceramic materials, which is something nobody has done before, which essentially is making sure that they're never exposed to a loading condition that ceramics are bad at. They're very good in compression. They're very bad in tensile load. So we make sure all those ceramic components are in constant compression. And so our intellectual property is all around enabling designs, and our search and examination reports have found no prior art in this area.
And you said 50 kilowatts for the prototype. What does that ultimately need to scale up to, and what was the efficiency of your prototype?
So we demonstrated essentially double thermal efficiency compared to a normal one, so in the region of 50, but that was more of a heat balance. The next phase will be an engine which is closer to an end product, right? So something with the ancillary systems, etc., closer to final product. In terms of what that needs to scale up to, so our markets typically are in the 300 kilowatt through to 8 megawatt range. What we plan to actually produce are modules of 50, 100, and 300 kilowatt size, right? That will vary in cylinder size, and then an end user will be able to stack these modules to meet an overall power requirement. Because what you often see in the heavy goods vehicles is that 300 kilowatt engine serves that vehicle well, and we won't need to sort of scale the modules. But for the marine sector, what they often do is they do modularize their power units, because then you're able to kind of stabilize, load requirements, switch modules on and off depending on how the vessel is operating, whether it's at port or at sea. So we plan to take this 50 to a 300 kilowatt demonstrator in the next 3 years. We have an OEM partner on board who's going to scale that project as part of a Danish grant, which I'm happy to disclose some information on as a follow-on.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I would say the biggest question that I have that would need to be answered is how capitally efficient you can grow and scale this, and how you plan to do that and make it into something that can still be a venture type outcome.
Right. So in that context, a lot of people, they see it as competing with the existing automotive and engine makers. We don't see them as competitors. We want to partner with them because ultimately we want to keep this company streamlined, focus on the tech, continuous innovating on the product itself, and use those existing players as partners and their knowledge and existing use base on design for manufacture, design for cost. And they will essentially do the heavy lifting for scaled production and distribution. A lot of startups in this space try and take all that on up front, and that's actually the biggest challenge, is trying to scale up production. So we want to go through the joint venture route with a lot of these players, and I think a good example to benchmark us, as a venture entity is to look at a company like Yasa Motors, who focused on demonstrating their value proposition with end users directly, so through pilot projects, demonstrating profitability at a unit cost level through a small pilot line and early JVs with manufacturing partners, and then bringing the two to an existing player like Mercedes or Mitsubishi to show them that there's market one for the technology, that it's profitable if you scale it up from a unit cost point of view, and really they take it on there, and you often see an acquisition at that point from one of those existing players. And we really feel that that's the best route in terms of exit.
So what's a great outcome mean for you?
A great outcome, I think a great outcome is really having an impact on these markets that are in a nightmare scenario. As founders, we are impact focused. We see these heavy duty markets in a very tough spot, because a lot of the innovation around passenger cars is not necessarily applicable, but yet they face the same kind of stringent regulations by 2050, and they're in a really tight spot, and don't really have solutions to decarbonize. So I think impact first, bringing a technology to market that can really help this transition is what, as founders, we're really targeted towards doing.
And if you're acquired by a single company, would you have then larger impact or smaller impact, as you would then be under one of the big players?
So the joint venture route really allows us to kind of have different pots cooking, right? So there are automotive supply, or powertrain suppliers, I should say, that focus on the marine sector. So we can have joint ventures that look specifically at main propulsion for marine with maybe a John Deere or a Cummins. And on the automotive side, the Class 8 HGVs, you've got Daimler and Mitsubishi, etc. And so I think long term, we plan to focus in on these specific joint ventures in certain market verticals that will allow us to kind of maximize on what we can have as an exit potential for investors.